What's up, my awesome YouTubers? Ryan1988 or Justin back here to do a video for you all. I hope you're all doing well out there, and today I'm here to rank the Hellraiser franchise. Something I've wanted to do for a while, and I meant to do it last month in October after the new movie came out, but I had two more movies to watch and revisit, and with each one of these movies, I wanted to give you guys my fresh take on every one of them, give you my thoughts. And my opinions have changed with some of these movies. If I would have ranked these movies 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I think the ranking definitely overall would have been a lot different than it is now. This isn't a franchise where I go back and revisit it often, but I thought with the new movie coming out, this would be something fun not only to rank as far as a franchise goes, but also rewatch this franchise. And I have to tell you, like, even some of the bad movies or some of the weaker films, I found to be entertaining. I found this franchise to be fun to rewatch. Even the bad ones, I found just fun to watch. They're bad movies, but they're fun. I think one movie on this list I probably won't go back and watch. I don't know if I'll ever check it out again, but the rest of the movies, I actually found myself entertained for most part, and there are movies I definitely love. Definitely my top 5 movies are the ones I love, and then I would say some of the other movies I find to be pretty good, entertaining movies with interesting stories, and this franchise alone, it's not in my top 5 favorite horror movie franchises of all time, but I would definitely say it's in my top 10 favorite horror movie franchises of all time. And so I want to give you guys my thoughts, all 11 movies. We're going to talk about them, or I'm going to talk about them, and I want to know your guys' thoughts. What are your favorite to least favorites, or least favorite to favorite in this franchise? What are some movies to you that stick out that maybe other people don't really care for, or what's the unpopular opinion? What's your favorite one? Is the original one your favorite? Is another one your favorite? Just kind of give me your opinions, give me your thoughts. Let me know your guys' ranking. I know mine might shake things up a little bit, but let's get started. So coming in at number 11, you think it would be Revelations, but it's not. Coming in at number 11 is Hellseeker, and this is the one where Ashley Lawrence returned to the franchise. This came out, I believe, in 2002 or maybe 2004. Some of these Dimension Hellraiser movies, straight-to-video movies, all kind of blend in together. I feel like every year we got one of these movies, but Hellseeker for me, the first time I ever watched this was back in 2007. I loved it. I thought it was great to have Ashley Lawrence back. I thought it was a really interesting story. But the past couple times I've watched this movie, I find this movie really hard to watch, and I find this movie just to be a bad film. I think Ashley Lawrence is definitely the strongest point of this movie. I wish we had more of her. I think she's great in the film. I like what they did with her character. They have an interesting twist with the character. Doug Bradley, the screen time that he has, he's pretty good in this movie. It's always great to see Doug Bradley in this role. But everything else with this movie, I just don't like. I don't like the main character. I felt like he's very unlikable. You're not supposed to like him. I felt like the story was, out of all the movies, the less interesting one. I really didn't like the story too much. This one, just for me, is probably the most disappointing one now, because when I first watched it, I enjoyed it. I didn't love the film, but I definitely enjoyed it. And over time, rewatching it, I just find this movie to be a bad film, not entertaining, kind of a chore to get through, and, that's my number 11. Coming in at number 10 is Revelation. So Revelations is going to be everybody's worst film in this franchise, I feel. This was the first one after Hellworld that we did not have Doug Bradley as Pinhead. And I'll first say this, the actor who plays Pinhead in this movie is not good. He is one of the weakest things about this movie. But where this movie ranks higher than Hellseeker is I find the story to be interesting. If this movie had better acting, a much more bigger budget, if the studio actually had faith in this movie and did something better with the overall movie, I think the movie would have worked well. Because I do like the story. I think the story is really interesting, and there's some good, I don't, would you call them good? There's some twists in this movie that are definitely things that stand out with the film. I kind of, wrapping this one up, Revelations is a bad movie, but the story is why it is at number 10 over number 11. And also the practical effects. I think this movie has some of the best practical effects since Hellraiser 2022. I almost drew a blank there. I think the practical effects definitely beat out a lot of the Dimension, mid 90s, 2000 Hellraiser movies we've had. The practical effects were actually really good in this movie. So I enjoyed the story overall. I like the concept, I guess. And I enjoyed the practical effects. But everything else is a bad film. I just don't think this is the worst one. And actually, I would watch this over Hellseeker. Coming in at number 9 is Hellworld. So this was the last Doug Bradley Hellraiser Pinhead movie we had. And, I went back and forth. I was like, is this like the worst Doug Bradley movie, or, is it one of the worst? And it's one of the worst. Now, I find this movie to be entertaining at times. I find this movie to have enjoyable moments, but it's not a great movie. It's definitely not. It's not even, I would call, a good movie. It's just fun. I think it's a fun film you can watch. You could probably put on in the background. Maybe, if you want to have a good, fun time watching some cheesy slasher movies, you can watch this one. This one definitely has the slasher feel outside of the other Hellraiser movies. They were going in a little bit more of a direction as far as, Pinhead in this film and kind of just the movie and the atmosphere itself. Again, more slasher than any of the other Hellraiser films. Acting here, it's subpar. It's not terrible, but it's not great. It's, as far as a Doug Bradley last Hellraiser movie goes, I wish he would have had a better film, because it is, again, not a good movie, but I find it entertainingly bad enough to where I can go back and watch it. Again, interesting story. Like with Revelations, I like this. I like the concept here. I like the story. And that's why I can go back and watch this movie over definitely Hellseeker. Coming in at number 8 is Inferno. So I think this one was 98 or 99 when this movie came out. And this is the one that's directed by Scott Derrickson. Hopefully I'm saying his name right, who would go on to direct, Sinister and Black Phone and so many other movies. Inferno, I sometimes hear people say this is the worst Hellraiser movie, outside of the Doug Bradley ones. This is the worst one. For me, I find this movie to be really enjoyable. I wouldn't say it's enjoyable. I really like the movie. I like watching it now. I think the story's interesting. It's got almost that detective story that Hellseeker has, but I can at least watch this movie over Hellseeker. Pretty good acting here, pretty good practical effects, one of Doug Bradley's best Hellraiser movies or best performances. I'm just not one that hates this movie like other people do. Now, when I first saw this movie in, the early or mid 2000s, I wasn't too crazy about it, because it definitely is one of the first movies where they took a script and they made it a Hellraiser movie, or at least it's how it feels. And so over time, I've appreciated this movie more and I enjoy it more. But yeah, no means is it a great movie. It's just an entertaining film that I can definitely go back and watch over, some other Hellraiser movies. Coming in at number 7 is Deader. So Deader for me is a great film. I really enjoy this movie. I love the fact that they went in a different direction. Instead of doing a detective story, they went into a journalist, trying to figure out what's going on with this cult who, commit suicide, and then they're able to come back alive. I think the lead actress in this movie is great. She does a great job here. I think Doug Bradley does a pretty good job for the screen time that he has. When I say that he gives great performances in Inferno and in some other movies, as far as the later Hellraiser movies go, he's the best thing about those movies. This movie has a lot more going for it than Doug Bradley. Again, I like the story shift that they went with. They didn't do the, tiresome, detective story that we had twice in a row before this movie. They did something different, and I really like it. I like the overall concept of the story. I think the acting, again, overall really good. The lead actress is great in this movie. It's not, a film that I can go back and watch a lot, but when I do watch the film, I think it's definitely one of the best films to come out from, the late 90s to the, mid 2000 Hellraiser movies. Coming in at number 6 is Judgment. So this was the movie that we had before the new one. And the first time I watched this movie, I thought it was pretty good. But it wasn't going to be a movie that I never thought I would go back and watch again. It's well acted, and, it's got a, really good story. I just found the film to be kind of disturbing and just not a film that I really remembered too much of. Going back and rewatching this movie, it has ranked higher than I thought it would. Number 6 is kind of like midway into this franchise ranking, and I thought this movie was going to be down on one of the bottom ones. I thought I wasn't going to like it a second time, and I liked it much more a second time than my first viewing. My only fault with this movie is I wish the studio, again, kind of like with Revelations, even though Revelations is one of the worst, I wish the studio would have had more faith in the movie. I wish we would have had a bigger budget with this film, because overall you have a really good story here. It's definitely the better detective story that we've had. It's got a nice twist in the movie, the story here. The actor who plays Pinhead does a pretty good job in the film. After Doug Bradley, taking over, Doug Bradley's role at the time, he did a good job. I was pretty impressed with his performance, especially rewatching the movie. Again, my only fault with this movie is I wish we would have had a bigger budget with the film, because the story's really interesting. The acting's overall pretty good. It's disturbing to watch at times. Like the first 20 minutes, I had a really time watching because it's just kind of cringy to watch. Not really gory or anything. I mean, there's some gory moments, but just some stuff happen within the, first 20 minutes that are kind of hard to watch. But Judgment, it's a solid Hellraiser movie. I definitely enjoyed watching it more a second time, and it's a film that I'll definitely go back and watch again. Coming in at number 5 is Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth. So this movie years ago would probably be in, definitely my top 4, top 3, but it's went down the list. Now, my number 5 from number 5 and going to number 1, all of these are movies I love. But where Hellraiser, Hell on Earth ranks in at number 5 is because I think the film is probably a little bit outdated for its time. I think the movie's a little cheesy, a little hokey compared to the other movies I'm going to talk about. It's definitely a fun film. It's definitely one where I can go and have a fun time with it. But as far as a film that ranks high, higher than the other movies I'm going to talk about, it definitely kind of fits at that top 5 spot. Some of the Cenobites, the new ones that we had, there were some cool looks to them, but I think they're some of the less interesting ones that we've had before Hell on Earth. And, just some of the less interesting Cenobites, in the franchise. It's, again, a fun 90s movie, and it's one that I can definitely go back and rewatch and still love for its cheesy camp factor. But as far as the other 4 movies go, I think they're better than this movie. I think, this movie has, a really good structure to it. I think the story's great. I think it's a fun continuation with, the Hellraiser movies, and with Doug Bradley as Pinhead, he definitely gives his best performance in the franchise, and he gives definitely has more screen time in this movie. But yeah, Hell on Earth, it falls on the list a little bit for me because I think it's a little outdated. I think it's cheesier compared to the other movies I'm going to talk about. But I still love the film, and it's going to always be in my top 5. So, coming in at number 4, though, is Hellraiser Bloodline. So, this movie is a film that I think more people are appreciating now than they did when it first came out. Is this movie perfect? Absolutely not. Is there story problems? Absolutely. But I find that this one's a little bit more interesting than Hell on Earth. Hell on Earth is a fun movie. I enjoy watching that film. I love it. But what I love about Bloodline is the more serious tone that it has to it. But I also love the overall story. I think the idea of, a movie that takes place in current time, or at the time that it took place, is really interesting. Then you got the space stuff. But I love the backstory of how the box is created, how, our one of our first demons in this was created, with Angelique. I like the prequel side of it. I think the prequel side is really, really good. That is my favorite part of this movie. After we get past the prequel part is where most of the problems happen. You could tell that, this movie was reshot, that the story was rewritten probably several times. And if you kind of go back and look at the backstory with this movie, there was a lot of studio interference. There was, another director coming on board. It had its problems, and you can tell that the movie is not perfect. But for me, I love the concept of this. I love, again, the prequel side of it. I like the idea of where the box was created. Bloodline for me is a very entertaining movie that I love for what it is. And, I wish we would see the other cut of this movie. I would love to see the, director's cut of Bloodline and see how different it is. But the movie that we have, I find it to be just a film that overall I love and very entertaining. And when it takes itself serious, it's really good. It's a pretty dark film. And Angelique is one of my favorite characters in the franchise, and definitely one of my favorite Cenobites that we have. So, but going into my top 3, I'll say this. I think all these movies might change over time, depending on, when I rewatch the movies, how I feel about them. But my top 3, I would say they're 5 out of 5 movies. I love these films. I love all 3 of them. I think they're fantastic for what they are. But coming in at number 3 is the original Hellraiser. This is the film that started this franchise. It's one of my favorite horror movies of all time. I just absolutely love it. Clive Barker is a genius here. He's always a genius, but this is where, for me, this is Clive Barker's best. I love the story. I like that this movie is definitely more of a dark, twisted love story, and it's nothing really, it has nothing really to do with Pinhead overall. Pinhead is a second character in this movie. He's very iconic, and Doug Bradley is very creepy when he's on screen, but the center focus of this is this twisted love story that we have with Julia and Frank. Claire Higgins is one of my favorite, if not my favorite thing about this franchise. I wish we would have had more of her because she is amazing in this movie. She's even more amazing in Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, but I just absolutely love her. She's a great villain that you love to hate, but, gives a great performance in these films and is one of the most, if not the most interesting character in this franchise, in this franchise. I love Doug Bradley. That's not dissing him, but I think probably the most underrated character that we have in this franchise is Julia because she doesn't get enough talk, and I just think Claire Higgins is amazing. Ashley Lawrence as Christy in this movie is great. I think, again, she gives a better performance in Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, but she's great in the movie. This movie has overall really good acting. It has some of the best, if not the best, Cenobites that we have in this franchise. It's a dark, brutal, gross movie. It's not a film that you can go back and watch a lot, and I think that's the reason why it ranks at number 3 for me. Is it can be a tough watch to watch. It can be a tough movie to watch, especially when I rewatched it this time around. But yeah, despite its grossness that it has sometimes, and it's sometimes hard to watch, I love the film. I do love it, and it's a movie that I like to go back and watch at least once a year, especially around October. I think it's definitely one of my favorite Halloween watches. But yeah, it ranks in at number 3 for me right now, but this could shift and could be number 2 at some point or number 1. But yeah, Hellraiser from 1987. Coming in at number 2 is Hellraiser 2022. What a movie that surprised me, and I think it surprised a lot of people who watched it. I love the film. David Bruckner, directed one of my favorite movies last year with The Night House. I think that movie's amazing. I've heard great things about another film he did, The Frontiers, maybe that's what it's called, or The Ritual. I think it's The Ritual. David Bruckner did such an amazing job with this movie. I think this movie, from the story structure, the concept, the acting, the from the beginning to the end of the film, I find it very entertaining. I just love the film. I think this movie is amazing, and it is a movie that at first was my favorite Hellraiser movie, but kind of, soaking it in after a second watch and rewatching it a couple times. I'm not going to rank it number 1 right now because it is one of the films that I've seen least of right now. However, I love the movie. I think it's fantastic. I think Jamie Clayton is amazing as our new Hell Priestess. That they call her in this movie. They don't call her Pinhead. Doug Bradley wasn't actually called Pinhead in the franchise, but he's known as Pinhead. I like that this movie wasn't trying to disregard Doug Bradley. I think, what I love about the film is that they made Jamie Clayton her own character. Yes, she has the pins and everything, but she gives a different performance than Doug Bradley did. She's more ruthless in some ways in this movie. There's some pretty intense moments with her, and she's amazing. So Jamie Clayton is fantastic, and I hope we get more movies with her and David Bruckner. Bring the crew back because, they're just wonderful. It does have some, kind of slow moments in the middle of the movie, but rewatching it a second time, I think those moments get better. I just love this movie so much, and I look forward to rewatching it again and again. It's definitely going to be one of those Hellraiser movies I watch over and over, and it's going to be one of my go-to ones. So, coming in at number 2 is Hellraiser 2022. Number 1 is Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, my favorite of this franchise. I rank it at number 1 because I feel like out of all the stories that we've had, this is definitely the best concept, the best story. I think this is the best acting that we have of the franchise. Again, Claire Higgins, Ashley Lawrence, they're returning characters, but they give better performances in this movie. You're introduced to the character Tiffany, and I don't think she gets enough talk. I think Tiffany's a great character. She doesn't have a lot of dialogue, but as far as her eye movements go and her body language and just kind of as the character develops in this movie, Tiffany's a great character. Again, doesn't have a lot of dialogue, but when she talks, she's good. She's definitely a great actress, but overall, Tiffany's a great character in this franchise. Frank is back in this movie. The stuff that we have with him is definitely really interesting and some of the most memorable moments in this movie. You're introduced to, a main villain in this film, the doctor, which I'm blanking on his name. I'm not even going to try to remember the name, but he's our main villain in this film, and he gives a great creepy performance when he becomes a Cenobite. Doug Bradley and the other Cenobites are back, and what I love about this movie with those characters is you get to see their true form as the movie goes on. There's a moment in this movie where their true forms are revealed, and it's really interesting. So I love Hellbound, Hellraiser 2. I think it's definitely the best of the franchise. It is the best of the franchise. And out of the movies, this is the one I will go to the most. I just love it. I know some people don't love it as much, but I just absolutely, it's hard to say you adore this movie because it's a tough movie to watch too, but I adore the movie. I love it for what it is, and I think it's a fantastic movie. Again, characters that return, they give better performances. Claire Higgins, Julia, is one of my favorite characters in horror movies. She's amazing, and I just think this movie's great. Christopher Young's music, I want to mention that. Christopher Young is just wonderful, and I love his music. He does such a great job with the Hellraiser movies he's involved with. So Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, that is my number one. That is my favorite of this franchise. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I did not expect this video to go on almost 30 minutes, but now you guys know my thoughts where this franchise ranks. Where I would love to see this franchise go is a continuation with Jamie Clayton's Hell Priestess. She's amazing, and I would love to see David Bruckner, direct more movies. If I had one gripe with that film, is I wish, the movie would have had a theatrical release, because I think the movie definitely deserved it. So, if people keep watching it, if people keep talking about it, maybe in the future a studio will say, hey, we don't have to have this to be a big theatrical watch or a big theatrical release. However, maybe do something like Terrifier 2 or some other movies in the past where you release it for a limited time and we get more Hellraiser movies in theaters. I would love to see the franchise go back to theatrical movies. I think, despite the ups and downs in this franchise, 2022 proved that you can make a great Hellraiser movie, and hopefully we have more of them, and maybe possibly more theatrical Hellraiser movies. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. Definitely stay tuned for more videos to come, guys. I have a lot more to come up. I have a Blu-ray collection overview that I want to do as far as my horror movies I have. So I'll be doing that at some point, and more videos to come, guys. I want to review some 4Ks that I've watched, and I want to talk about, especially The Changeling, which is a great 4K. So I want to talk about that and talk about my love for the movie. More retrospective and memory videos. I don't know if every one of them will be live chats, but I'll definitely do live chats. Some more to look forward to soon. And lastly, I just want to say thank you guys so much for subscribing to the channel. Thank you for watching. Thank you for liking. Most importantly, just thank you for watching, guys, because I am over, 4,200 subscribers, and I never thought I'd get there. So I thank you guys so much for that. Thank you for watching, as always. That's the most important thing. And 14 years in December. It's going to be amazing. I can't believe it's going to be 14 years. But it's going to be 14 years since I started the channel. And with your guys' support and love, I keep doing this. And I love what I do. So anyway, guys, as always, you guys are awesome. You guys rock. In with the positive, out with the negative. Go eat some Skittles. So much love to you all. And remember to always be yourself, because you are amazing and you are beautiful. All right, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.